nukes will not be the thing that leads to the collapse of society. Now, in the modern age, a lot of people think nukes are gonna be the way the world ends. People are gonna launch nukes, and I mean, it's very possible because with the Kim Jong Un's of the world, um, I mean, it's really just him. There's probably a few other people. Like, I don't know if does Israel have nukes? They had a nuclear program, but it really is just North Korea. And then the only people who have nukes that we would actually be scared of. But the problem is, one, their nukes are super outdated. They're not like nukes that we have, where the U.S., if we launched our nukes, we could pretty much wipe out an entire country. They have less, and their nukes are not up to date. It's very possible these nukes will just malfunction. They won't actually explode. And they're also not as big as ours, so they're not gonna do that much damage. Um, but with those types of people, those types of leaders, which is they're always gonna be around. People always fear, well, there could be a nuclear war or something like that. And to me, I just think that's so far off. My 8th grade history teacher told me, nukes are the biggest peacemaker in the world or something to that effect. And, at first I was like, that's pretty stupid. I mean, they're the most dangerous thing we have in our control. But then you realize he's right, because nukes are something where it's like, well, it's mutually assured destruction. So basically, nobody wins. There was a '80s movie called War Games, and it's about a kid who does this like thing. He somehow like hacks into this like game that the government actually runs, and it's basically a nuclear thing. Like, I don't even know how to explain it, but basically he accidentally triggers the nukes to go off, but he can stop it before they actually do, of course. Because he's playing a nuclear like war. Like, there's a computer, and the computer is basically simulating a nuclear war with him. But the problem is that the computer is actually run by the government, so the government is technically about to launch nukes. But anyways, so, well, it was a computer, but it somehow went off on the radars of the Russians, maybe, or something like that, so that there was like an actual possibility that there could be nuclear war. But that movie, basically the whole point is it's mutually assured destruction, so nobody wins the game. Like, the simulation was supposed to be a game or something like that, but in reality, with nukes, you can't win. Nobody wins. So when he said, they are basically the world's best peacemaker because nobody wants to get into that rabbit hole, he's being totally honest here, because nobody wants to use nukes, or like, people don't have the guts to use them. Kim Jong-un is the only person who actually would probably use them. And Asia would be in danger, but I just don't think it would. I think he's gonna die. I think they're gonna collapse before. But yeah, nukes just assure destruction for everybody. That's why nobody wants to use them. And a lot of people think, oh, well, someday nukes are gonna get launched and everybody's gonna die. And I'm not saying that's not impossible. That is definitely possible. There's always gonna be some rogue person in the world that will do that. But like Russia's not gonna shoot their nukes. They've lost it. And I think people think Putin's I'm not saying he's not a bad guy, but people think he is this like Adolf Hitler, where it's like, well, I'm gonna kill everybody and stuff like that. He is not that type of guy, but he's still a bad guy nonetheless. But he's not the guy where he's gonna launch nukes just because he's losing power or something. Kim Jong-un, of course, would do that, but Russia is probably the biggest threat. In Russia and China, and even China wouldn't do that, and the U.S. wouldn't either. So that's why I just don't think that is exactly the case for why society would collapse. Because I'm pretty sure, well, either if we go full nuclear war, I'm pretty sure it's most likely everybody dies, but there's still a possibility that some people live. It just kind of depends. It's what the situation is, but I think the collapse of society will be created by society itself. I think the world will go into a warlord system, or at least country by country, and we're seeing it now. More and more countries are going into this warlord system where it's like these mini factions control this area and they fight each other. Like in Ethiopia, I really like Ethiopia. I think Ethiopia is really cool, but Ethiopia has their problems, and now I think they just started, or they're about to start fighting a war over the Tigray region, which is in the northeast part of Ethiopia, and Eritrea will be involved. And basically, there's a bunch of warlords, kind of. They're like rebel groups in Ethiopia. So there's an Amharan ethnic group, which they're really cool history. They have their own militia. The Tigrayan people have their own militias, or they have their own army, the TPLF, the Tigrayan People's Liberation Force. And then Ethiopia, of course, has their army. Eritrea has their army, and then there's like Oromo militias, which is another ethnic group. There's a lot of militias. Now we haven't really seen that spread to other more advanced countries, but that's what I think is going to happen. We're seeing polarization in literally every country on planet Earth. The U.S. very, very polarized. The U.S. is going to be the next empire to fall. I don't think it's going to be soon, but it will be sometime. And then there's like Russia. Russia's immediately going to go, like within the next 50 years, Russia will collapse. Or they'll just do a whole rechange of government, which I really hope that happens because, the Russian people aren't bad people. Their leaders take advantage of them. But yeah, Russia's gonna collapse pretty soon. Europe's looking the most steady out of all countries. Like, Britain's doing pretty bad, or the UK is doing pretty bad. France is doing terrible, I'll say that. But, like, Poland, they're doing pretty good. Most European countries seem like they're doing really bad, but they're not doing that bad. Like they're still doing okay. I would say that all the European countries are doing better than the US. That's not even like a political belief on me. The US is just very polarized. It's pretty clear to see. But my prediction, again, I think they're just going to be a bunch of warlords who realize, hey, we can prey upon people who are fearing. Because a big thing in the U.S., and I don't know anybody who outside the U.S. would know, but all our politicians basically prey on us, and they see where people are scared, or people are nervous, or people are unsure, and they just capitalize on it. So Trump was capitalizing on immigration, and he made everybody scared. Oh, there's terrible people coming in, and I'm not denying there's criminals coming in, but there's also good people who don't deserve to be treated this way. And he preyed on people, and now he's got basically a cult. The Democratic Party is the same way. This is a little political belief here. They do talk about like how abortion is, infringing on the rights, and like women don't have any rights in the US and stuff like that. And I don't know, I don't want to get into the whole can of worms, but they were saying, to women, like, oh, if they take abortion from you, you have no rights in general. And so then people started getting in front of that. Now there's a cult on the left side. So there's really a lot of stuff, and I think that's what's gonna happen because you see more and more in the U.S. at least. There's more militias. There's more, there's like the Proud Boys on the right. They're a racist group. Um, Antifa on the left. They're like they're practically communist. But really, of there's a lot of different groups being arisen, even in Africa is the biggest scenario of this, where like literally every African country has a militia group that's rebelling to some extent. There's also, I'm trying to think, Southeast Asia is pretty bad. There's Myanmar. Um, there's just a lot of places, but really, that's the thing that's going to happen is because people are going to get preyed upon for their fears, and then eventually, like, they'll just, they'll turn into a polarized group, and then that's what's going to happen. And just all these big governments and countries will just collapse because they never addressed the fears of the people, and then people got polarized really quick, and they jumped to conclusions, and now there's groups. We'll see more domestic terrorism and stuff like that. That's how, in the modern day, that's how civil wars just happen. It's just domestic terrorism. And there won't actually be like a civil war like the U.S. had in the 1860s. It'll be much more small cells in certain areas and cities will commit crimes, commit violence, commit murder. But yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I just think people always get so scared of the nukes, but they forget that our society is actively collapsing, and it's gonna turn out to be something like the Bronze Age collapse, where basically all the big governments on the map just got rooted out from the inside, and they lost their power, and then it was just a bunch of factions. And I think that's what's going to happen with the world. And one by one, we'll see countries, and then people will be influenced to, hey, well, they're rising against their government or whatever. Why can't we do it? And then people get more brash, and they get more polarized, is the word. And then eventually, we'll just see a bunch of small groups, and then I guess we're at the next checkpoint in history. But again, this is a very anarchist view. I still think it's very possible that the world just keeps chugging along, but it's been a little, this is a little sad, but it's been a little too peaceful for the past 100 years, besides World War II. So after World War II, it's been pretty peaceful. We haven't really had any major wars. There's always going to be some type of war in third world countries, but it's been a little too peaceful, and I think there's going to be a major war, but it's not going to be a nuclear war. Nukes will not be used. I think nukes will be, I don't know, I feel like sometime in the future nukes will be defunded and they'll basically like ban nukes or something. They'll find a way to ban them. But once nukes are gone, then, then it's just pure violence. Because that's why it's been peaceful, is because nukes are here. So people are like, well, if we just start beating them, they'll just nuke us, and then the whole world's over. But yeah,